because you should be a citizen to buy housing, and that shouldn't be controversial. They then play the racism card because they know that woke ideology is running rampant through Western countries. Go watch the short form videos, but I was fuming, absolutely fuming. No, that's not how our response is. That's not a normal person. Right now, we're not finding much like common ground. Move on to a topic that TikTok does not like me talking about. All right, you guys, it looks like you really enjoyed the video that we did. I think it was 2 videos ago. We've done an investigative series by then, but we basically did a candid rant. So let's do another one, guys. We're just gonna go over and just say it straight because I'm so sick of the mainstream tiptoeing around these issues and missing the main problem. And last time we did a rant like this, it was very much focused around the breaking point in Australia where a lot of things were just building up. And I was just like, what is going on there? It was very, very candid sort of thing. I was just saying whatever's on my mind. So let's do it again because I scrolled through some of the comments under that post and you guys felt like exactly the same way. You're just like, I've had enough of this shit. So let's go through it. Let's been going through the bullshit that's been circulating and let's just keep speaking out about it, guys, and keep pushing and supporting One Nation because as long as we keep speaking out about this, change is going to happen, right? We're going to bring our great country back to what it, I guess, used to be. I don't know what it used to be because I'm not that old, but you know, let's just bring it back to our great country and let's just keep speaking out about it. So let's get into it. It's going to be a good episode, a good rant, and I want to start by talking about what happened last week with Barnaby Joyce, right? So he spoke to Sky News and basically just made a mistake and then came back on air and corrected it. But the mistake was that he said that permanent residence was going to be included in One Nation's policy of, you know, giving foreign owners and temporary visa holders and false citizens residing overseas. They were giving them 2 years to sell their Australian residential properties. But then Barnaby Joyce came out and said that permanent residents would be included on that. However, after he made that mistake, he came back on air and corrected it. But Pauline Hanson put out a statement correcting it all because it got very confusing through it. Even like I was watching it and I was like, oh my God, the host is saying different words that don't actually mean what he's trying to say. And it got all very confusing. But then Pauline Hanson came out correcting the whole thing, putting out the policy, what it actually was, and permanent residence wasn't actually included in it. But let's just quickly go over what a permanent resident is compared to a citizen because it is a bit confusing. So a permanent resident is basically someone who resides in the country, so they stay in Australia permanently, but they don't obtain an Australian passport. You know, you can't work in the ADF or like a government role. We can't really do that. They can't like apply and be the Prime Minister. You can't vote. You don't really have any rights that a citizen does, but you can live permanently in Australia if you feel like it. But if you go overseas and you have to reapply to live in Australia, that sort of thing. Where a citizen is obviously, you know, if you're born in Australia, you would know what a citizen is. You have every right, you know, well, not every right, but you have the right to vote. You can be the Prime Minister, whatever. Those are the two main differences. But what I want to get into here is the first thing, a policy including ownership of Australian property for permanent residents. I have a problem with that because the first reason is that if you want to come to this great country, you have to be fully committed. If you want to be an Australian, you have to be a citizen, right? So that means that you have the right to vote in every election. You have to be upheld with the responsibility of being an Australian. And once you become a citizen, you get afforded the benefits of ownership of housing. Like, I think that should be how we roll with this. I don't know why it's so controversial. It shouldn't be. If we allow permanent residents to buy our housing, that's one, you know, negatively affecting citizens wanting to buy freely into the housing market and wanting to buy multiple properties if they feel like it because they're just buying them all up by permanent residents who are not even citizens. And furthering, you know, the housing shortage. And two, like, it will never incentivize someone to fully commit to this nation if they can just be afforded the housing benefit. And I mean, One Nation overall, I think you're an Australian first party, right? You seem to have our interests at the front of mind and keep pushing it. However, we always need to keep them accountable. But with this one policy, once you get elected, hopefully you get elected, but once you do, we might need to push harder on that because you should be a citizen to buy housing. And that shouldn't be controversial. And slightly off topic for a second, in Bali and in Indonesia, they have a great policy. You know, they don't allow foreigners to purchase the land, to own the land. They allow you to lease the property on top of the land so you can get, you know, like a 25-year lease or a 10-year lease, whatever, for your house. However, the land itself is owned by the citizens. It's owned by the Balinese or Indonesian people, and which is their country first. That's amazing to do, you know, if you love Bali, if you love Indonesia, and if you want to live there, then you have to go through the process of becoming a citizen. And after you become a citizen and renounce, they have a policy that you have to renounce your origin country. They have very strict regulations. So, but after that, like, you can own the lands. You're afforded the benefit of owning land and having ownership in Bali or in Indonesia. You just have to go through the process of being fully committed to that country. So, you know, that right there shows you have to commit yourself to your country before you can be afforded the benefits. And that also further shows that once you have invested interest into that country, like, you're obviously going to care a whole lot more about how it's run and about the operations, about the infrastructure, all those sorts of things. And so I think, like, the way that Bali and Indonesia runs that, I think that's great. And I know, like, we can get into the nitty-gritty things of, you know, Bali compared to Australia. It's completely different countries, but I quite like that. And I don't know why there was so much pushback around this One Nation mistake, because it's not their policy. They're allowing permanent residents to keep their properties and not having to sell it to an Australian. But I really don't know why it was so controversial, that even if it was their policy, don't know why there was so much pushback on that, because I think that's just an Australia first policy. You know, become a citizen, commit yourself to the country, then you're allowed housing. No problem with that. But also, guys, something that I've just been noticing is a lot with, like, these Greens in supporters and, like, lefty influencers. They seem like they're getting a bit nervous with the rise of One Nation. And I've been seeing so many videos coming out from lefty people who, they usually, like, talk about politics and talk about their opinions, but they're not so firm in it. But I've noticed over the past couple of weeks, like, they're coming out so much more and making so many videos about One Nation and about Pauline Hanson. It's quite interesting, and it just shows that there is a lot of turbulence in politics right now. And I'm noticing a very, you know, it's a bit negative. Like, I'm noticing very a sided and divided approach. That's so stupid, sided and divided. But I'm noticing a very divided approach. And I'm guilty of it too. You know, we call the Greens, you know, lefty tree huggers and all sorts of things. That's not constructive at all. But they call us, you know, fucking racist and all this type of shit. But it just seems like right now we're not finding much, like, common ground. It seems very hostile, where we have polar opposite beliefs. You know, we're just sort of attacking each other because, you know, I want to cut immigration. Well, I want to keep immigration at the same level. And I want Australia to be net zero country. Well, I want coal and nuclear. And there's very much no, like, middle grounds, right? Which is a bit worrying because, like I've said so many times, once a society is divided, there's power for extremists to rise up. But it's also that it's not a good functioning society. Like, that's not how a good functioning society should work. Like, we should go back and forth on both sides. We should be able to communicate with each side of politics so we don't lean too far to the other side. And, you know, both sides are, I wouldn't want to be leaning too far to the right, wouldn't want to be leaning too far to the left. You know, guys, it's pretty annoying to hear, you know, not the extremism sides, the other part. But because we do need to get back on the right. Like, we do need to bring our country to a more traditional nation, because the left has had it for a while and balance is needed. But I think once we have it there, we've got to have some more communication. It cannot be this hostile going forward. And freedom of speech is a big thing, because the government is trying to restrict how much we can speak online, trying to restrict what we're thinking, trying to control what we do, basically, and how we think. They're trying to control how we think, and that creates us a dangerous situation. So I reckon, guys, you know, in a couple of years to come, to our decade, let's say, I think it's going to be very turbulent. We just need to make sure that we keep freedom of speech alive, so communication and debate can stay alive, so it doesn't turn into this hostile or any sort of violence happening. Because I can just see there's a bit of stagnation happening between the left and the right, just because, like we said before, polar opposites beliefs right now, and it's a bit worrying. So if we can't speak out and if we cannot do that, then we're going to swing too far to one side. But guys, I've just been thinking about that over the past couple of weeks, and let me know your thoughts on that, because I'd really love to hear what you think about that. Have you been noticing that sort of separation? Really would love to hear your thoughts. So leave some comments below. But I think freedom of speech is just such a big thing to keep debate alive. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on that. Love to hear it and love to hear your perspectives. But let's move on to the tragedy of what happened in the UK. Henry Nowak. We've made 3 separate videos, like short form videos on this, because I seriously cannot put into words how disgusting, disturbing and sad that tragedy was. I understand it happened December 2025. However, for us in Australia, we only found out like last week. And like at Impact at least. And I mean, that just tells you how much the mainstream what they choose to push, what they choose to bury. And now I'm sure everyone knows what happens and what the case was. And anyone saying that this has nothing to do with race, you're just a fucking idiot. All right, it has absolutely everything to do with race. The murderers played the racism card, the police believed them, and Henry died. That's what happened. So check out some of our short form to get more in depth in the case, but because I think that's very important to do that. But I've talked about it quite at length there. But now I just want to focus on Keir Starmer. Like Keir Starmer, Tony Burke, Albanese, you make my skin crawl. Seriously. Ugh. He had a disgusting reaction to this. And I just want everyone to understand that these politicians want to make it so unsafe in our country, so insecure, so divided, so an authoritarian government can rise up to power. That's what we're really getting at here, right? That's the baseline. Okay, because Keir Starmer came out and basically said that Grok and Elon Musk and the US involvement in the UK politics, like that was causing division and basically led to this. What planet are you on? That's what Albanese did with Bondi. These prime ministers use a tragedy, make it out like the cause for that attack was the reason that they selected, and they push legislation or push an agenda through into the public to convince them of that, and that they're keeping citizens safe by doing it. It's ridiculous. It's manipulation. So Keir Starmer, you should be absolutely ashamed of yourself. You should be disgusted by yourself because your actions led and caused to Henry's death. And I just want to take a look at these protests that happened in the UK. God, I'm getting frazzled about this, guys, because it makes me so angry and I literally, oh my God. Anyway, I want to get to the protests that happened in the UK, which they were showing respect for Henry and his family until the police came with their big protesting, rioting shields and, in my opinion, escalated the whole thing a lot further in violence and a bit of rioting, rioting. It was just a bit violent at the end of it, and it didn't need to be. And if you watch the footage of the protest, we'll just quickly put it up on the screen so you guys can have a look, but you can clearly see on every person's face in that crowd how sick and tired and frustrated and angry they are about this, which they absolutely should be. Their country is going to shit. And also what happened to Nigel Farage, who basically came out and said, I'm pretty sure he said, I don't know the exact quote, but he said the response should be cold rage. And I absolutely agree with that. It should be cold rage. The UK is unrecognisable, and it comes down to one key thing. They've imported, I'm getting angry, they've imported millions of people, a lot from a third world country, okay, of whom, let's be honest, they think these acts are acceptable. They think they're semi-normal behaviour. And they come to a westernized country, a modern country, and they commit these acts. They then play the racism card because they know that woke ideology is running rampant through Western countries. And they think they can just get away with this. They've been doing it for years. This isn't just the first case. This has been happening for years. And it just leads to the same point. Anyone who puts their country first, if you're the UK, you're UK first. And if you're Australia, you're Oz first. Well, at least I think that's how it should be. But if it were like that, your country first, any politician would obviously see that they would never continue mass immigration because that's not putting their country first. It's not putting their citizens first. You would never continue to put your citizens at risk, which is just begging the question yet again. Who are these prime ministers? Who are these politicians? Who are you working for? We said this in the last video. Who are you working for? One, or you're just a true globalist, okay? Who are you working for? You cannot just be working for yourself, your self-interest. Like, there has to be some sort of care. I mean, are we giving them too much credit? Like, I would think, hopeful that a politician would have some sort of care for their country. Just a little bit of a spark of care. So you cannot, oh, God, I just had enough of this shit. Like, this isn't normal. Your responses are not normal. And I hope this makes sense. I hope this makes sense what I'm saying, because I feel like I'm just going on a huge rant here. But when a prime minister gets on TV and says this tragedy was harrowing and then blames social media, that's not a normal thing to do. That is not normal behavior. You cannot see what happened to Henry Nowak and just go, it was harrowing. Fuck that. No. Oh my God. Go watch the short form videos, but I was fuming. Absolutely fuming. No, that's not how a response is. That's not a normal person. No. And now let's change the topic. Let me know if you want me to speak more about that, because it's disgusting what's happening in the UK, and it serves as a great, like, not great, but it serves as a warning for us in Australia that we need to get our shit together. We need to clean up our backyard. We need to have a look at what's happening in the UK and go, I don't want that to happen in our country, and move forward and actually make a change. But anyway, let's move on to a topic that TikTok does not like me talking about. This does not like me talking about at all. And whenever I do talk about guns, there's a huge debate, and it never really gets spoken about. Like, I've never spoken about it in depth. So let's just lay it out. Now, in history, weapons have been seized from citizens for government and extremist control. All right, for example, and I can't say this word, I've said this word so many times, and I think I'm just getting absolutely censored by YouTube for saying it. So obviously you know what I mean, but I don't know, the group that controlled Germany in the 1940s, they basically in 1938 made laws that made it much easier for the general public to own weapons. However, they also passed regulations against Jews possessing weapons, and even after Bondi, in our country, there were notions of arming the Jewish community and obviously disarming the rest of our population. So, like, I know that's a very extreme example of that country who ruled in the 1940s. I can't say the word. I know that's a very extreme comparison back to us in Australia, but it's history. So I'm not even getting into any sort of debate about groups. I'm getting into how governments had the power to decide who could exercise freedom and who could not, and pursue that. And when I posted a video on TikTok literally laying out exactly what I just laid out, I got hit with misinformation. Bullshit. I was talking about what happened in Australia, the gun reform, and then I cited what happened in the 1940s Germany as historical facts, and I got bans. I got taken down, guys. And that says a lot, does it not? Like, that is not misinformation. I cited a historical bloody example and then correlated it to our gun reforms, and that got hit with misinformation. Absolute bullshit. And I mean, another example on this is moving on to Iran. Okay, Iran says that citizens are allowed to own firearms, okay? However, the majority don't. Why is that? Because they're heavily restricted. And now what happened? The US took out the head leader, and Trump even said himself that he thought the Iranian people were going to rise up against their government and take over. And I remember like hearing that, and I'm like, what are you going on about? Like, the simple baseline here is, how could they? They have no weapons. And seriously, everybody, when I talk about this, when I cite, an extreme situation and bring it back to what's happening in Australia, everyone goes on and says, no, that's just completely ridiculous. You're being paranoid. Like, that's never going to happen in Australia. We live in a free society. That's not the case. We do not live in a free society. Look at why the US has a Second Amendment. It's to maintain a well-regulated militia in case an extremist, like in Germany, rises to power. Like, this isn't some hypothetical story that I'm making up and saying this, could happen. It's a possibility and what can happen. It happens in history, especially in recent history. So, it's not some crazy statement to make, because that is what governments do to control and maintain power. And this is what gets to the bigger argument of, do you want the Second Amendment in Australia? Now, here is the thing. Australians do not have the fundamental right to own firearms. Okay, I disagree with that completely. However, we then need to get into what a right is, right? People in society can have their rights taken away from them. You go to prison, then you lose your freedom of right to liberty and freedom of movement, and potentially, I think in some cases, you can lose your right to vote, depending on what you did. So you can lose your rights in those sectors. You can most certainly lose your rights regarding firearms. America. Even though they have constitutional rights to bear arms, under federal and state laws, they can be taken away for criminal convictions, court orders, mental health reasons, like things like that. So even though it's constitutional right, it can be taken away. So I believe in Australia, everyone should have the right to own firearms. But we also need to remember that restrictions and regulations around firearms should stay intact. So firearm ownership, in my opinion, should be recognized as a civil liberty, because as we can see in history, governments, democratic governments, have far too much control, and that is dangerous. But always, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And let's wrap this episode up, because we've been ranting for a long time. But yeah, that's my opinion on owning firearms and having it as a right, because I think Like, we don't have that many rights in this country, and we need to change that. We need to strengthen our constitution. It's piss weak. So we need to have the right to free speech. We need to have the right to own firearms. And with that, you know, America is a completely different story because, like, yes, we're both Western countries, but culturally we're very different. You know, they were established a very different way compared to what we were established as. And yeah, it's very sort of different cultures and things. And I think if we then establish that every citizen has the right, the civil liberty to own firearms, we can then place outside, you know, restrictions around it and more regulations. And, you know, if you're a criminal, obviously you can have your right taken away and things like that. So I hope you guys enjoy this rant. Let me know also if you want more videos like this, but that's it for today. And make sure, guys, sign up for Kanga for these t-shirts and the jumpers that I wear. Remember, if we get enough sign-ups, we'll go into production. So the link is in my bio. If you like the Australian flags, or the Oz first, or the jumpers, make sure you sign up. But that's it for today, guys. Actually, one more thing I just remembered. It's Pride Month, guys. This month's Pride Month. Let's just go on a rant again. To celebrate what? Like, I'm sorry, but what? We understand that, you know, gay people face, you know, some challenges, but come on. A day maybe could suffice for that. Because I think if anyone's getting a month, veterans should. The people who fought, laid down their lives for our freedoms and made the ultimate sacrifice, and to honor those who have served and are serving for us to live the way we do. The US, I think, had one. I think Trump pushed it further in 2017, like a whole month for veterans to celebrate and stuff, well, to honor. But it's not very popular, and I don't think Australia has anything. So I think that's ridiculous. I mean, a whole month for Pride Month, like, come on. But let me know your guys' thoughts. I think if anyone's getting a month, it should be our veterans who actually served our country and fought and made the ultimate sacrifice to protect our freedoms. But let me know your thoughts, guys, and I suppose happy Pride Month. But that's the end of this rant today. Make sure to leave your comments and your thoughts down below. And I hope to see you all this Thursday for the second part of our investigative series. And I'll see you guys then. So thanks, guys.